Do you think the pyramids were built by slaves whipped under the sun, chains, sweating blood and tears while hauling stones? Buddy, I've got bad news for you. Hollywood lied to you for years. That image of the cruel Pharaoh and helpless slaves forced upon us for decades in films, series, and pop culture was nothing but a fabricated, dramatic, yet entirely hollow myth invented to break box office records. But when archaeology digs into the earth, it whispers a completely different, far more striking, and equally unsettling truth. First, let's clarify one fact out of respect for history. Those who built Egypt's massive pyramids were not slaves, they were paid workers. But the real big story isn't that the pyramid builders staged history's first strike. The pyramids were built during the Old Kingdom period. Our story takes place centuries later, during the New Kingdom, when pharaohs no longer commissioned sky-reaching monuments, but instead had those mind-blowing underground tombs carved into the heart of the mountains in the Valley of the Kings. Do you know who built these tombs? They weren't ordinary workers. They were the most skilled craftsmen of the ancient world, paid, well-fed, socially entitled, and organized like a union. And one day when their trusted patron, the pharaoh, believed to be a living god, failed to pay their wages on time, they did something no one in history had ever conceived of before. They put down their tools. They launched the world's first recorded workers' strike against a god. What I'm telling you isn't a conspiracy theory or a mysterious assumption. The evidence isn't in the hands of aliens. It was excavated directly from beneath the Egyptian sands. We literally found their payroll records. This is Deir el-Medina, ancient name, Setmat, the place of truth. A special, isolated, heavily guarded workers' village where only high-level artisans, stonemasons, painters, and scribes who built the royal tombs lived with their families. These people weren't prisoners. They held pretty cool job titles: team supervisor, works director, chief outline draftsman. Their wages weren't paid in currency, but in the era's most valuable commodities: grain, wheat, fish, and beer. Yes, you heard right. Beer wasn't just a drink back then. It was also a nutritious food and an official medium of payment. They had homes. Their families were with them. Moreover, they had an ancient healthcare system. When they got sick, doctors made house calls, and most strikingly, they had days off. If you read the excuses on those limestone notepads called ostraka that we've unearthed from the sands, you'd be shocked. One worker took leave saying, "My wife is menstruating today. I have to do the housework." Another said, "My eye hurts," while another skipped work saying, "I'm brewing beer at home." There are even those who requested transfers or job changes among them. Were these men slaves? Never. What we have before us is a qualified workforce that knew their rights, was organized, and where bureaucracy functioned smoothly, 3,000 years before modern unions were established. But the system wasn't always this perfect, and that's where the bitter truths come into play. There was one very dangerous illusion that set Egypt apart from all other ancient civilizations. The pharaoh wasn't just a king, a commander, or a politician. He was a god, the living Horus, the flesh and blood son of the sun, god Ra, on earth. The annual flooding of the Nile that fertilized the lands happened by his command. The sun rose thanks to him, and cosmic order, Ma'at, was maintained by his existence. At least that's the lie official theology sold to the people. In such a world you cannot defy the pharaoh. You only pray to him. You beg. You accept your suffering, hunger, and misery as a divine test, as part of the cosmic order. Because questioning authority means rebelling, not just against the state, but against the very functioning of the universe itself. But the workers at Deir el-Medina, their situation was different. They were building the tombs of the gods. They were the ones carving those sacred hieroglyphs into the rocks. They knew the secrets of those magical texts. Most importantly, they were very close to power. They saw with their own eyes the Pharaoh eating, getting sick, growing old, and eventually dying like a mortal. This proximity to power taught them a very dangerous truth. Power was a human thing. And even if the one before you was a god, you could always negotiate with humans. The period, the reign of Ramessid the Third. Around 1150 BCE. Egypt looked magnificent from the outside, but was rotting from within. Wars against mysterious invaders called the Sea Peoples had drained the treasury, corruption had engulfed the state, and while the priests of Ammon accumulated vast wealth, the people were driven to destitution. The elites skimming the cream off the system decided, as always, to make the producing class pay the bill. The date shows the 29th year of Ramessid III's reign, approximately around 1159 BCE. Grain and beer rations for the Deir el-Medina workers had been delayed for a full 18 days. Then a whole month passed, still no payment. At home, their wives and children were wasting away from hunger. While rich priests feasted in temples, the hands building the king's afterlife were being starved. And that moment came. The knife was at the bone. These men didn't loot. They didn't burn the city. They did something far cleverer and more dangerous. They organized. They threw down their copper chisels, gathered their tool bags, and abandoned the construction site. They marched straight to the heart of the state, to the Temple of Thoth, the god of bureaucracy, rights and law. He was the only one who understood paperwork, justice, and jurisprudence. They blocked the temple entrance. They chanted slogans. "We are hungry," they shouted. "We came here not just from hunger, but from injustice," they said. The first day passed, they didn't work. The second day passed, they didn't budge. The fifth day. The temple priests and local administrators were in panic. They had never faced such a crisis before. Workers didn't strike against gods. What would they do? Arrest them? They couldn't, because these were the only qualified crew in the world who could finish the Pharaoh's tomb. If the tomb wasn't finished, the Pharaoh couldn't achieve immortality in the afterlife. The workers had caught the system at its weakest point. We read that moment exactly from the Turin Strike papyrus, written by a scribe named Amenecte, and now exhibited in Italy. We are weakened by hunger. We have no clothes. We have no oil to anoint ourselves. We have no fish. We have no vegetables. Write to the Pharaoh who sustains us, to our good master, so that they may give us something to live on. This wasn't ordinary whining. This was the weaponization of qualified labor. This was the invention of modern unionism, collective bargaining, and negotiation 3,000 years ago. So what happened, you ask? The living God, the ruler of the cosmos, the Pharaoh, backed down. He submitted and made the payments. He didn't do this out of mercy or from a sudden surge of love for humanity. He did it out of necessity. That magnificent royal tomb needed to be finished. The great Pharaoh's afterlife depended on the mood of those calloused hands. As you see, even gods have deadlines they must meet. The workers returned to the construction site. Rations, that is, wages, were redistributed. On the surface, everything seemed to return to normal, but something very fundamental had broken that day. The veil of sacredness had been torn. It had been proven that pressure could be applied to the Pharaoh. A god had been forced to sit at the table and negotiate with mortal workers. This was the first and heaviest blow dealt to divine absolutism. Those workers probably didn't fully understand what they had achieved that day. They were simply worried about putting bread in their children's mouths. But they changed history forever. They became the first humans to look power in the eye and say, "You need us more than we fear you." Of course, the system didn't surrender to them easily. Let me tell you the bitter truth. This strike didn't instantly turn everything into a fairy tale. Payments were delayed again, and within months the workers had to strike repeatedly. The empire was already on the path to collapse. In fact, Ramessid III would eventually be assassinated in a conspiracy organized by his own harem, his throat slit. In a collapsing economy, a single strike couldn't save the world. But the spirit of this resistance was inscribed on the Turin papyrus and hidden for centuries in the darkness of a tomb, until it was discovered in the late 1800s. Do you know why we didn't read much about this story in school books? Because when the papyrus was found, the world was still busy romanticizing the slaves built the pyramids myth. Victorian-era elites who were exploiting their own working class in factories couldn't tolerate the truth that even in ancient times, workers could stand up for their rights. This truth didn't fit the exploitation narrative they had constructed. But truths matter, and the Deir el-Medina workers prove to us. Even gods have bosses. Even divine economies rise upon human labor. And organized labor is the greatest power in the world, whether you're facing a pharaoh or the CEO of a modern megacorporation. History isn't just the history of boring kings, golden crowns, and bloody wars. History is truly hidden in the moments when ordinary people, stonemasons, beer drinkers, wage earners with sweat on their brows, stood up and rewrote the rules from scratch. If you want to move beyond the myths forced upon us and meet the unsettling yet equally fascinating face of truth, subscribe. Because in the next video, another buried rebellion in history will make you question everything you believe in.